Route 75, Interstate 95, State Road 40. To most Americans, these are just numbers on a map arteries connecting Florida's forgotten towns. But in the winter of 1989, these highways became hunting grounds. And the hunter was a woman the world would soon call a monster. Her name was Aileen Wuornos. Between 1989 and 1990, she killed 7 men. She became America's most infamous female serial killer, a woman who shattered every assumption about who commits these crimes and why. This is not just a story about murder. It's about survival, rage, and the razor-thin line between victim and predator. Rochester, Michigan, 1956. To understand Aileen Wuornos, we must first understand where she came from. Born Eileen Carol Pittman on February 29th, a leap year baby. Her arrival into the world was anything but lucky.
What you see in Eileen's early life is a textbook case of developmental trauma. Before she could even form memories, the foundation of her psychological world was being destroyed.
Eileen never knew her father. Leo Pittman was a convicted child molester who hanged himself in prison when she was 13. Her mother, Diane, abandoned Eileen and her brother Keith when Eileen was just 4 years old, leaving them with their grandparents. But this wasn't a rescue. Eileen's grandfather, Laurie Wuornos, was a violent alcoholic. Her grandmother was cold, distant. The children were told their grandparents were their parents. The lie became another layer of dysfunction.
Aileen described being beaten with belts, sometimes stripped naked in front of her brother as punishment. She said her grandfather would force her to strip in the woods as a form of humiliation. Whether you believe every detail or not, the pattern is undeniable. This was a childhood defined by violence and shame.
By age 11, Eileen was trading sexual favors with neighborhood boys for cigarettes and spare change. At 14, she became pregnant after being raped by a friend of her grandfather's. The baby was taken from her and put up for adoption. That same year, her grandmother died. Her grandfather threw her out of the house. At 15, Aileen Wuornos was homeless, surviving by hitchhiking and sex work along Michigan's back roads. The pattern that would define her life had begun. For the next 15 years, Eileen drifted across America like a ghost. Florida, Colorado, California, Texas. Hitchhiking, sex work, petty crime, arrests for disorderly conduct, drunk driving, armed robbery. Her rap sheet grew longer, but she remained invisible, just another face in America's underclass.
You have to understand women like Eileen. They exist in the margins. Society doesn't see them until something explodes. And when it does, everyone acts shocked.
Then, in 1986, something changed. At a gay bar in Daytona Beach called the Zodiac, Aileen met Tyria Moore.
Tyria was probably the first person in Eileen's life who showed her anything resembling affection. Aileen fell deeply, obsessively in love. She wanted to take care of Tyria, to give her the life she never had.
But Aileen had no job, no money, no prospects. So she did what she'd always done. She worked the highways, selling her body to survive. Only now, she wasn't just surviving for herself. She was providing for the person she loved. And somewhere in those lonely nights on Florida's highways, something inside Aileen Wuornos snapped. December 1st, 1989, the body of 51-year-old Richard Nollery was found in a wooded area northwest of Daytona Beach, wrapped in a carpet. He'd been shot 3 times with a .22 caliber handgun. His car was missing.
At first, we thought it was a robbery gone wrong, maybe a drug deal. We had no suspects, no witnesses. What we didn't know was that this was just the beginning.
Over the next 12 months, 6 more bodies would be discovered along Florida's highways. All men, all shot multiple times, all with their cars stolen. David Spears, 43, Charles Carskadden, 40. Peter Seams, 65. Troy Burris, 50. Charles Humphreys, 56. Walter Antonio, 60.
What is unusual about Aileen's case is that she doesn't fit the typical profile of a serial killer. Most serial killers kill for psychological gratification, power, control, sexual sadism, but Aileen claimed her motive was financial. She needed money, and robbery escalated into murder.
But there was something else. Something darker.
They tried to rape me. Every single one of them. I was just defending myself.
Self-defense. That would become Aileen's story. But was it true? By the summer of 1990, Florida law enforcement knew they were hunting someone unusual, possibly a woman. Witnesses had seen two women driving victims' cars. A composite sketch was released to the media. Police are searching for two women in connection with a string of highway murders. If you have any information, please call. The break came from an unexpected source. The women had pawned items belonging to the victims, and under Florida law, pawn shops required thumbprints. Within days, police had names: Aileen Wuornos and Tyria Moore. On January 9, 1991, Aileen Wuornos was arrested at a biker bar called The Last Resort. The hunt was over. What happened next would become one of the most controversial aspects of Aileen Wuornos' case. Police convinced Tyria Moore to cooperate. In exchange for immunity, she would help them get a confession.
Lee, I'm scared. They're saying I'm involved. You have to tell them the truth.
Ty, I told you, you don't know anything. I did this alone. You're innocent.
Aileen believed she was protecting Tyria. She had no idea Tyria was working with the police. When she found out later, it devastated her.
On January 16, 1991, Aileen Wuornos confessed to killing 7 men. But her story kept changing. Were they all self-defense? Were some? Or was she simply a cold-blooded killer? Aileen Wuornos' trial became a media sensation. Here was something the public had rarely seen a woman serial killer. The press devoured it. She was called a monster, a man-hater, a predator in human form. But others saw something different. Advocates for sex workers argued that Aileen was a victim of systemic abuse, a woman pushed to the breaking point by a lifetime of violence.
Aileen Wuornos was let down by every system that should have protected her: her family, social services, the justice system, and then when she finally fought back, in whatever twisted way, society wanted to destroy her.
The prosecution painted a different picture. They argued Aileen was a calculated killer who lured men to their deaths for money. They pointed to evidence that contradicted her claims of self-defense. Victims shot multiple times, robbery clearly the motive.
This defendant is not a victim. She is a predator. She hunted these men, executed them, and stole from them.
On January 27, 1992, Aileen Wuornos was convicted of first-degree murder in the death of Richard Mallory. She was sentenced to death. She would later be convicted in 3 more cases. In each trial, the verdict was the same: death. Aileen Wuornos spent 12 years on death row. During that time, she gave numerous interviews, becoming increasingly erratic and paranoid. She claimed police had harassed her, that she was being tortured with sonic pressure. Filmmaker Nick Broomfield interviewed Aileen multiple times. What he captured was a woman disintegrating psychologically, her mental state deteriorating in the isolation of death row.
This evidence Aileen suffered from borderline personality disorder, possibly antisocial personality disorder. By the end, she may have been experiencing psychotic symptoms. The question is, was she mentally competent to be executed?
In her final interviews, Aileen recanted her self-defense claims. She said she killed the men in cold blood. Many believe this was a strategic move away to ensure her execution and escape the torment of death row.
I killed those men, robbed them cold as ice, and I do it again. I'm not sorry. I'm supposed to die. I'll be up in heaven while you're all rotting down here.
October 9th, 2002. After exhausting all appeals, Aileen Wuornos was executed by lethal injection at Florida State Prison. She was 46 years old. Her final words were defiant to the end. She said she'd be back like in the movie Independence Day with Jesus to condemn the world. Outside, protesters held vigil. Some celebrated justice. Others mourned what they saw as the execution of a damaged woman who never received help. So who was Aileen Wuornos? Monster? Victim? Both?
I think Aileen was a deeply traumatized person who committed horrific acts. Those things can both be true. Understanding her pain doesn't excuse what she did, but it does explain how someone gets to that point.
The tragedy of Aileen Wuornos is that she was failed at every turn. And then, when she became dangerous, society's only response was to eliminate her.
Her case raises uncomfortable questions. How many Aileens are out there, surviving on society's margins? How many will break before someone intervenes? And when they do break, is our justice system equipped to handle the complexity of trauma and culpability? Since Aileen's execution, her story has been immortalized in books, films, and documentaries. Charlize Theron won an Oscar for portraying her in Monster. But beyond the entertainment value, Aileen Wuornos remains a symbol of violence, of victimhood, of America's uncomfortable relationship with its most vulnerable. 7 men lost their lives, families were shattered, and somewhere in the darkness between survival and murder, a little girl who just wanted to be loved became America's most famous female serial killer. The highway is empty now, but the questions remain.